Welcome back to Morning at NTV. 3 days to go to the national elections on January 14th. That is going to be Thursday this week. And uncertainty still looms as Uganda heads to those polls. Like I mentioned, 17.6 million voters are anticipated to be casting their votes on that same day. That is Thursday, January 14th. But then, like I mentioned during my preamble, we do have more women, 9 million, and lesser men, 8 million. So if the 9 million, the women stay home, and the 8 million men go and vote, that means we shall be ending up with the low voter turnout. Just like during the COVID-19 pandemic. You saw during the lockdown, more men were risking it, going out there to brave any kind of situation to ensure that they keep food on the table. The women on the other side, because of the violent nature of the atmosphere outside. You had members of the military patrolling the streets and so forth. People were being beaten. So the women stayed home. They said, you know what, I'll just stay home and keep it safe. But then we saw the men go out there into areas of danger to make or eke a living. So even the election, according to some experts, they contend women might stay home. I have females who are calling me already saying that me on election day, I'm not going to move out. I'm going to stay in the house. So you might end up with more men heading to the polls than the women. So instead of the 17 million or 17.6 million voters, you might end up with a little less than 10 million voters in that regard because of the anticipated violence within this election. But I do have the former member of the East African Legislative Assembly, that is Mr. Mike Sebalu. He's also a member of the NRM media team with whom we are going to be sharing a few aspects on the last campaigns by the president, the incumbent President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, ahead of Thursday. Very good morning, Mr. Mike Sebalu.
Yeah, good morning, my brother. I think this is the first time I'm appearing on the show in this year. I was last year in 2020, so I'm glad to be hosted.
Well, like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. It creates a world of difference. The one who passed on 2 weeks ago passed on in 2020.
Indeed.
And the one who is passing on today is 2021.
And I did put up a post on New Year's telling people that just because we've crossed into 2021, it doesn't mean that COVID-19 has been left in 2020. We should keep our masks, and I'm glad that you're wearing one. So I wanted to pair you with the Lord Mayor, Erias Lukwago, but he couldn't make it. He tried calling me in the middle of the night. I think he had another scare health-wise, but we shall get back to him and find out. Maybe we shall have him on Tuesday, but let's do it solo. What is happening in the... Yes.
Before we go there, I want to salute and greet Ugandans out there who are viewing this program. I want to congratulate you upon transiting to 2021.
Indeed.
It's not something we should take for granted. It's God providence and blessings. And I want to wish you a happy, productive, and prosperous new year, full of hard work and serious commitment to work. And my message for all of you is that the new year has begun, but I want to put a new dimension that the real new year for Ugandans will begin on the 14th. The way you vote will determine whether the year will be good, productive, and eventful. If you get it wrong, definitely you will have a wrong year, a bad year, and 5 years in suit will be affected. So I want to encourage you to make very good use of the 14th. That's when you should determine how good 2021 is going to be and how good the next 5 years are going to be, because the leadership has a lot in shaping the lives, in shaping the trends, in shaping the dynamics of a country. So I really want to encourage you to secure your future on the 14th.
So indeed, what Ugandans do on Thursday will determine whether or not we shall descend into chaos after January 14th. I've had the president say, if you do not vote for the NRM, this country might disintegrate into chaos if you vote the other side. We want you to help us understand that analogy, that only peace can prevail in Uganda when NRM is in power.
Yeah, I think the whole idea and the narrative behind that is in terms of quality of leadership.
I see.
It is in terms of a record of peace, a record of sanity in leadership, appreciating coexistence, emphasizing the rule of law, and disciplining those in uniform. So it is a whole
system that has been tested.
Because you'll agree with me that for the past 34 years, Uganda is a stable country. At one point in time, Uganda was a net exporter of refugees. You know, people would go to all kinds of places to seek peace and security and to feel a sense of security. But at the moment, Uganda is a net importer of refugees. And that is an evidence-based, a scientific narrative that defines the state of peace in Uganda. All our neighboring countries, all on the African continents, when people fail to make it to the West, America, Europe, and other places, within the African context, Uganda seems to be the place to go once one has failed to make it to those more other alternatives. So Uganda is now a net importer of refugees. We have the biggest population of refugees in the whole world. We have the best policy and the legal framework regarding refugees. And all those are tested areas of leadership. So when you talk about the peace agenda, the peace dividend, the NRM is tested continentally and internationally. That's why even some of the most developed countries, you find the US, you find the EU, on matters of security, Uganda is a reliable and viable partner, and Uganda is the center of gravity for trying to stabilize the Great Lakes region, the East African community, IGAD. In all these countries, Uganda is a force to reckon with in terms of anchoring the peace agenda within the region. And the person of the president has stood tall amongst African leaders on matters of peace. That's why he's also putting a lot of emphasis on Pan-Africanism as a basis for African security. That's why he's putting a lot of emphasis on the East African community. It has very many other variables like economic development, but the fundamentals of the same rotate around the issue of peace and security. So with such a profile, with such a record, you have every reason to trust that a secured future for Uganda is guaranteed by NRM, which has lived by the same, which has practiced the same, which has championed the same, and it has gotten dividends, not only within Uganda, but in the entire region. By the time the NRM came up, security had disintegrated. You'll appreciate that for the about 15 years of NRM rule, we were preoccupied with the activities of stabilizing the country. We had insurgents in the north, in the east, in Kasese, and all those kind of places. That has since put to rest, and the entire country is at peace. All Ugandans are in the productive processes, but at one point that was not the case. So with such a record, I think you have every good reason to believe and understand and appreciate that NRM is top on the bulk in terms of managing peace, among other very many leadership variables.
In a nutshell, Uganda should vote for the NRM camp January 14th simply because the regime has stood the test of time.
That is among other reasons.
But then you have members of the opposition who are saying there should be change on January 14th simply because of that same analogy. The NRM has been here for the last close to 40 decades.
Yeah, you see, being there without impact, I would agree with them. But being there with impact. So it is like when you are in a state of certainty, but just because you want change, you risk to opt for change even where certainty is not guaranteed. So you go into the unknown, you go into uncertainty. I don't think that is a wise thing. But you will appreciate that the opposition that we have is driven by the desire to capture power. And that is normal. There is nothing wrong with it. But at what basis? Just look at the opposition the way it is configured now. We have an opposition that does not believe in leadership. We have an opposition that only believes in positions, not leadership through influence. How do you explain an opposition where every other election, when a new leader emerges, they jump on the bulk? When Kizza Besigye, Kano Kizza Besigye came, DP and all these other parties ran into fray to go in bed with him. When Mbabazi came, the same direction. Now when Kyagulanyi came, the same. Now with that kind of opposition, you simply know that you don't have a viable, credible alternative. I just want to give you an example. When you look at a party, a vice president of a party is supporting a president of another. And you don't have the courtesy of saying, look, now I don't have confidence in you as my president, let me opt out. Actually, those who decamped are more credible now because they took a decision that could be sustained. But you find a vice president supporting a candidate of another party when his party is fielding a presidential candidate. Now that is just an example to show how incredible that we can look at the opposition as an alternative. So with such an opposition where there is no clear ideology, because being in a party is an ideological conviction. You believe in certain things being done in a certain way to meet certain objectives. But if a leader is only obsessed with the changing mandate of an existing leader, and therefore he should jump in bed with anyone who offers that alternative, then that kind of opposition is not ideologically based, is not ideologically anchored, is not ideologically driven. And yet, the basis of multi-party democracy is to champion and propel a given ideology in terms of governing the affairs of the state. But we don't seem to have that. You have 10 members of a party decamping to a new party whose ideology is not yet known, who the party was acquired through a controversy, a party that is bought out like in a marketplace. You leave a historical party, an independence party, and then you jump into this. So I really get serious challenges. But as I wind up on that, the issue of experience, of exposure, and of expertise is something that informs all our decision makings. If I'm to invest in a media house, a television, and I'm looking at a moderator, I would look at you. And what will inform my decision is your education, your experience, your exposure, and your expertise. I wouldn't want to gamble my investment with an upstart. I pick someone who's just come out of college to manage, but I'll look for Busiku who has been tested with experience, with exposure, and with expertise. When you look for a contractor, someone to build your house, more often you want to know how long has this person done it, what kind of projects has he handled, and that informs your decision making in all aspects of life. So if we look out for experience, expertise, exposure in all aspects of life, when you look for a mechanic, you want one who has done it for the last 15 or so years, not one who is just begun. So why should we then try to disengage with that principle when it comes to a critical matter of leadership, where those variables should even be much more appreciated and considered when taking a decision?
In a nutshell, you're saying in Uganda, opposition political parties are not playing by ideological politics, but rather politics of identity. Yeah, we follow a politician, not the ideology of the politician.
There is so much of identity. That's why you find that some parties, I want to be very, very open. The Democratic Party, the Buganda's kind of views are quite dominant. And majority of the people who decamped seem to have issues with someone who is from the north. And yet that should not be the case. You have other considerations of religion also factors in some political parties. Now you find even a new political party which is playing on the youth agenda. Now the youth agenda is not a permanent kind of state. youth is transitional. I want to tell you, I joined the politics as a youth. I represented the youth of the Central Region in the Constituent Assembly. I had just left university. But I've since grown into other stages of life. That was a stage. So when you're a leader, you should be able to look at the country in a wholesome manner. And that's why the NRM is positioning itself as a mirror where all segments of the society are reflected. The women are reflected, the young people are reflected, the elder are reflected, the disabled, because when you are leading a state, you are leading the entire country. But when you put your agenda on a given section of the population, then you are being selective, you are being exclusive, and yet good leadership should entertain matters of inclusivity, matters of diversity, and matters of accommodation. So that is now where the ideology disappears, because ideology is supposed to address all aspects of life in governance and in leadership. And I find that seriously wanting and missing in our political opposition. The way they position, the way they... Because even opposition should be done in a responsible manner. You advise, you don't simply criticize, you don't simply reject whatever is being put on the table. You need to look at a policy and be able to discern what is it that is in for the people. If it is a good thing, it doesn't make you worse of an opposition appreciating and supporting a good agenda. But here you find that everything that is offered has to be opposed because they are in opposition. And that is not what it means to be an alternative government. It means that you should support where necessary, you should advise, and you should be able to appreciate. So even the narrative of Uganda after election, because you talked about that. Yeah, when people start talking of Plan B, Plan A and Plan B, no, that is not ideological. Because when we go into an electoral context, we are simply subordinating ourselves to the provisions of our Constitution. And it is very clear in Article 1 that power belongs to the people who shall determine the leadership and how they should be led. Now, that is the only channel we have to access leadership positions. But if you go into an electoral process and you already have Plan A, which is subordinating yourselves to the set procedures of accessing leadership, and Plan B, that means you don't have confidence in the other one, and you are offering alternatives which could have largely unforeseen and undesirable consequences, because Plan B is not unpacked. What is it in it? Because we know that when you go for electoral process, you either win or lose, and regardless of the outcome, you should be able to appreciate that democracy remains good. Whether you've won or whether you've not won, democracy remains good and remains the most credible process of accessing leadership. But you find that that is not the case. There are people who go into an electoral process ready to denounce the outcome should it not come the way they want it to come. Now that is not being democratic. So we have people who talk about democracy without practicing democratic behavior.
We are still talking about politics of identity versus politics of ideology. You have members of the opposition who are saying that it's actually the NRM that is propagating that culture of politics of identity. In that, the NRM has had one presidential candidate since 1996. Number one. Since 1996 at least, even though the president already stood for another, already stood in 1980, but then we shall start from 1996. There's been politics of identity. President Museveni has been the only presidential candidate for the NRM. They also contend that the NRM has destroyed structures that would work instead of the president. You know how people were saying, president should come and help us. The president should come to our rescue. When there's a problem in a community, people call on to the president, not the agency or the ministry that is mandated to actually handle those problems, but they look out for the president. So no structures, and that also alludes to politics of identity. Wouldn't you agree?
No, I wouldn't agree with that narrative. First of all, the president has been subjected to regular renewal of mandate by the population, the entire population. And even within the party, there are mechanisms that have always been used to follow in terms of coming up with a candidate. I just want to use the analogy of football. In football, it is clearly said that the worst the best coach can do is to change a winning team. That is the worst the best coach can do. So likewise, as a party, we have someone who has demonstrated capacity and ability to govern and lead. And he enjoys the mandate and support of the greater majority of Ugandans. And our aim as a party is to ensure that we undertake our process of transformation. So that creates stability within the party, and that has created stability within the party. That is the reason that many emerging leaders have come up, many emerging leaders, many generation of leaders. And that's why in NRM, you don't find people running from the party to any other emerging political formation for the sake of position.
There's already a strong candidate.
There is already a strong party with systems, with clear principles of application, and with best practices. So when you have a leader who meets the threshold of good leadership, changing that leader for the sake of it is not the best idea. You've seen some examples in America. I think we've had very interesting kind of revelations out of that practice. Now, if you have someone who can deliver you to the destiny that you've set yourself out, he's available, he's willing, and he's still enjoying the trust of the party, I don't lose sleep over having such a leader to maintain good leadership, provided he's subjected to democratic processes in order to access the positions of leadership. And that has been done regularly and timely as per the laws of Uganda.
Given the length of President Museveni's tenure, it is undoubtedly true that, yes, he is a very experienced leader. But then, aren't you afraid that he might leave a power vacuum within the NRM party structures when he vacates Ugandan politics? Because none of the young people have been trained to take over.
No. You see, NRM has exposed not only party members, NRM has created an environment that has exposed Ugandans to governance, good governance, to leadership, because even some of the opposition parties that want to gain some good leverage are trying to understudy the NRM. When you look at Major General Mugisha Muntu, when he disagreed with the FDC, he disagreed with the FDC on the basis of building party structures. And his argument was that without party structures, you can't think of getting victory over a party that is well grounded in terms of structures across the country. And Dr. Kizza Besigye was taking the viewpoint of defiance and that populist approach. But Major General Mugisha Muntu was such that for you to be an alternative, you need to be equally well-structured, well-grounded.
And that's what we saw him doing during the campaign. Instead of spreading a message of, please vote for me on election day, he was simply building structures.
He's building structures.
Yes, but then here's a party that has built structures, the National Unity Platform Party. At least they were trying to build structures before and during the campaigns. Now, we've seen most of their coordinators being arrested, and many of the opposition members within the National Unity Platform Party contend that the NRM government has orchestrated a ploy to destroy its structures. That's why we are seeing Robert Kyagulanyi, the presidential candidate, being alone on his campaign trail with Mityana Municipality MP Francis Zake. Where is the security team? Arrested. Where are the supporters? Arrested.
I think
no structures.
I think you are getting it wrong. NUP doesn't have any structures. It may have a campaign team. That is different from a party structure. They don't have a single branch anywhere in the country, registered and with membership and with leadership. There's no such a thing in NUP. That's why they were not able to comply with the standard operating procedures. because when they go to a place, they don't have any structures to address so that they can create a multiplier effect of the message. That's why when they go to a place, they look out for crowded areas, marketplaces, and all those kind of places where you can easily draw a crowd, and you talk to the crowd, and you go away, creating an impression and a perception.
So the crowds were not coming to Robert Kyagulanyi, he was going to the crowds?
Yes, in most cases, because that's why they didn't go for formal, planned meetings that conform to the standard operating procedures, like candidate Museveni has been doing. He hasn't been going to crowded places. You get a venue and follow the standard operating procedures, target a given audience. The one who is not in part of that audience does not appear, and follow all manner of protocol to be in conformity with standard procedures. Reason being that NRM has structures, and through structures you can get the message transcoded to the lower levels. But without, you must move all over the place. So when you talk about structures, there is nothing like that. Go into the primaries. That is where you can test and know a party with structures. NRM held primaries using the structures in all the villages, in all the constituencies, because there were people to man the processes and deliver an outfit out of the electoral process. But the NUP primaries...
So the vetting committee doesn't
for them,
constitute a structure?
That was a selection committee. They were selecting who goes where. That was not a primary where people contend. And that's why the outcome of such were highly contested. That's why even very many credible, who appear to be credible candidates within that political persuasion never made the list. Because in the list there was even a consideration of loyalty to the principle. Now when you put such in your primaries, that someone must be loyal to you as an individual, not loyalty to the party, that's where you go wrong. That's where the ideology
politics of identity.
Yeah, politics of identity. Ideology is to the individual. I can tell you there are people within NRM who participated in primaries who were not necessarily loyal to candidate Museveni, but they made the list, and the party is supporting them because they are party members, and they went through a democratic process of party members. So ideology is not to the individual candidate Museveni, ideology is to the party. Your support, your loyalty is to the party, not individual.
Okay, let's
but
go.
When you get a party clearly putting that as part, and I'm told Chameleon lost the flag for mayorship because his loyalty to the individual Kyagulanyi was questioned. Now you get that kind of background. It doesn't seem to appear like ideologically grounded kind of philosophy.
But we wouldn't also sit here and claim that the NRM primaries were also a rosy affair. We also saw some intimidation, some violence here and there, people losing their lives within the NRM primaries, cases of vote rigging, ministers intimidating other candidates in the race.
I've not said that it is perfect, because a process of that magnitude, a process of a national character, a process of national coverage, where our primaries are bigger than the national election in terms of outreach. We have more polling stations than the country has in terms of the way we've structured ourselves. So when you get mistakes here and there, it is not the norm. That is an exception. So for every general rule, the exception. So there were those areas of indiscipline, of omission and commission, but the principle is that the members of the party were given an opportunity to decide and determine who should be their leader. It was not done at headquarters. It was not done in the boardroom, in the AC, and you determine who goes where. It was determined by the people. So if that person turns out to be a problem, the people have themselves to blame. They own and they take responsibility for the decision they took. And that's what democracy is all about. So if you talk about a party that practices democracy, champions it, cherishes it, I think NRM is on record for doing exactly that.
And of course, the incoming President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni has been adhering to the SOPs. But another issue I wanted to debunk is that supporters of the NRM have not been adhering to SOPs. Isn't that right? The surrogates.
Yeah. And the difference is that the NRM party is on record sharing a circular. The Secretary General, Right Honorable Kasule Lumumba, is on record sharing communication to all party leaders so that they also communicate to their followers to the effect that standard operating procedures must be respected, must be practiced, and must be given priority in all the meetings. Even where interactions have been from the party secretariat to given districts and branches, that has been the case.
All right,
before the
this,
party is on record to support the procedure.
All right, on record, you're going to do something for Mr. Mike Sebalu. On record, you're going to use that camera and just call on the supporters of the NRM and other political organizations who are not following SOPs to adhere by the standard SOPs. And also, please call on the people in this country, the citizens, supporters on all aisles of politics, to desist from violence during and after the election. This camera.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank NTV for this initiative and the request that has been extended to me. I'm Mike Kennedy Sebalu, member of the NRM party, and I want to use this opportunity extended to me by NTV to call upon all Ugandans, the leaders, the followers, the party members, to follow the standard operating procedures so that we conclude this electoral process without endangering the lives of the people of Uganda. We need to have a healthy, productive population, and in order to do that, we need to ensure that we follow the standard operating procedures as a way of nipping in the bud the spread of COVID-19. It is a killer, it is real, it is devastating. Many families, many of us have lost loved ones. We've lost leaders in this country. And the discipline and the initiative to stop the spread begins with you at individual level by putting on your mask, by washing your hands, by sanitizing, by social distancing, and by avoiding crowds. Be where you must be when it is absolutely necessary.
And on
if
the note of
violence,
violence,
then please avoid and be part of the agenda of scaling down the spread of coronavirus.
And people want to cause chaos.
And with regard to the electoral process, we are going to vote on the 14th. Let's be respectful of democracy, because democracy is there to determine leadership. And the outcome of an electoral process should be appreciated and should be accepted by all actors, because there is no two way about it. One person is going to emerge victorious. He may not be the person you are supporting. He may be the person you are supporting. Either way, act responsibly. If you've won, won with dignity and decorum. Don't provoke, don't undermine. And if you've lost, lose with dignity and decorum. Appreciate, go back and reorganize and do better. So let's not engage in violence. It is undesirable, it is wasteful, and it is destructive.
All right,
and it is not a civilized way
Mike
of managing one's life.
Before I let you go, yes, according to what I've been talking to you about, I'm getting this kind of feel that the NRM doesn't see Robert Kyagulanyi, the no presidential candidate, as a threat. But then what we are seeing, the behavior of the security apparatus, the way the heavy-handedness being meted out on the NOP candidate, Robert Kyagulanyi, seems like he is a force to reckon with. And it seems like the NRM regime is actually scared of this young man. He is on the campaign trail alone, except Mityana Municipality MP Francis Zake. Zake says all the other MPs are afraid to even get close to Bobby Wine, who also says his life might be in danger. He flew his whole family, not whole family, the children, out of the country simply because he was scared of what might happen to that family. The wife is still here, but you can get a sense that there is something that is wrong. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, that is a very good question, and I would like to respond as follows. Now, Chagulanyi's decision to fly out his children is a decision he's entitled to, and I wouldn't lose sleep over it. The only problem is to politicize it. He's got the freedom to take his children wherever he wants to take them. But to justify it politically, I think is not the right thing to do. That is being political, and that is not right. Maybe he has information that there are certain things that are going to happen after the elections where he doesn't want his family to get mixed up. If that is the plan B or those kind of undertakings, then it is unfortunate. Otherwise, all Ugandans are safe, including Kyagulanyi and his family, including all presidential candidates and their families. They are all secured, and they are all living in a peaceful country.
Mike Sebalu, the former East Africa Legislative Assembly Member of Parliament, thank you very much for having made the time to speak to us. At this opportune time, I'd like to link to our reporter, Stephen Mbide, who has the latest in the world of traffic. Very good morning, sir. What's the latest as far as traffic is concerned?